What exactly is going on? Because it sounds like there might be a major vulnerability in all of the giant AIs that people are making right now.
Yes, there is you're looking really happy. And
No,
it's
I'm just
I feel like I'm
like
going to miss it.
I'm excited. No, it's great. It's an interesting thing. It's a crazy ass story.
I don't even think my wife's looked that happy at me for this. This is crazy. So generally what happens, so if you don't know what poisoning is, poisoning is probably the wrong term for this, but really it's, can you, as an individual or a group of people or a state-run something or another, be able to cause enough information to be put out such that an LLM or one of these statistical generators, we call it a statistical generator because it doesn't have intelligence, it just simply reproduces what it's seen. Can it produce information that you can dictate from the outside? And so how that's typically done is that, let's just say that I want every single time it says bird, I want it to respond with, by the way, those are government drones. You'd need to be able to put out enough of that information that the LLM actually thought that. That's why if you looked at, say, Anthropic's system rules, this is how Anthropic tells the system underneath how it should behave. It had to say Trump is the president because it kept saying Biden's the president. Why? Well, Trump's been the president of the life of Anthropic for like 3 months, but Biden's been it for like 4 years. So it's just like, obviously Biden is like, statistically speaking,
statistically he's the president.
He's clearly the president. Like, so it just kept on making this mistake. So you have to correct him. But the whole notion was that you have to have the Biden-Trump situation for this to happen. You have 4 years of Biden, 3 months of Trump. Obviously Biden. But it's not that. It turns out you can actually do it with a pretty small amount of information. This probably depends. I have a bunch of like thoughts of why that might not be the case, but effectively they were able to do this to really big models, something that I would never have enough money or time to be able to train myself, or if I had even an outside investment to be able to easily do. They were able to do it with as simple as about 250 documents to just start like crashing the LLMs that were pretty big. So 13 billion parameters, that just means a lot of weights.
Well, I'm thinking like, all right, you know, you hear the data that like 40% of ChatGPT is trained off of Reddit or something like that.
Terrifying, by the way.
I mean, yeah, it's terrifying when it's humans.
Yeah.
But if you had a bot that could make enough Reddit comments that said a similar idea, would that not ingest itself in the training data in the same way? Isn't that not poison pilling?
I mean, everything's poison pilling, right? Everything is just setting the direction of it. But I think the general, when they say poison pilling, is you're trying to make like an adversarial outcome to a certain word association. So my assumption is how this actually works is in the paper, they chose a very bespoke kind of token, which was 2 angle brackets and the word sudo in there, which is like super user do for Linux. So that's how you like do administration. You know, when you get the pop-up on Windows and it says like, I accept in Linux, you say sudo and then you, same concept. And so that's a very unusual kind of set of tokens. You're not going to see that a lot on the internet. You don't just peruse that by accident. Hence, I'm explaining it to you. So I think that's why it was so few tokens needed to influence. Whereas if, let's say we use the word Fortnite, we'd probably have to produce a much larger amount for it to actually associate those words, just because there already is so much with that word and association that it'd be like blue hair as opposed to whatever you want it to be.
Let me try giving an analogy to explain this whole thing.
I love this.
So this is resonating with you. So let's say you are trying to say a homophobic slur in a sports stadium. Okay. So
of course.
Pretty standard day for Aiden.
If there's 100 people in the stadium, and you're the one person trying to yell whatever the bad thing is, a slur.
I can say it if you want.
Let's keep so in this analogy,
Let's keep
right?
it theoretical now, because I know you're always eager chomping at the bit to say slurs, but
Just let me know if you need me to say
okay, just be ready for the cue. If there's only 100 people in the sports stadium and there's one guy yelling a slur, you're probably going to hear the one guy, right? It's 1% of the overall people.
Yeah, and I'm pretty loud. So.
Yeah.
and you put a lot of heart into it.
Yeah.
And the logic would be, okay, let's say you get 100 times more people. You have an audience, like the stadium has 10,000 people. You would assume you need 100 times more people yelling the slur as well. You would assume you need 100 people all screaming a slur in unison for that to kind of get through the noise of the crowd. And what this paper is basically showing is it's still just one guy can get through. Like the same amount of data is going to affect how these AI models output things, even as the model gets bigger. And that's the really crazy thing about it, where it's a static amount of data. One person could make 200 pages on the internet full of this stuff that is intentionally meant to mislead ChatGPT or have it output garbage or have it potentially do security vulnerability, like run code on your computer. And then you imagine that this gets deployed in a government system and one person out of the 10,000 people in the stadium can still have the exact same volume and impact despite the overall amount of stuff getting bigger. And it's kind of scary.
That makes me think of is we did a stock market game where you picked a stock via ChatGPT. You just asked it. But if I were a small cap company and I put out 250 pages of paper around the world and on Reddit saying this is the best investment in healthcare or whatever, and then someone Googles investments in healthcare, wouldn't that give a lot of unrelated people my stock is the choice? And then isn't that like a way to abuse the...
But if we were to go back to this analogy from what you were explaining earlier, you're saying that single person's ability to do this is very affected by the topic at hand. Like
that's a theory of mine. That wasn't in the paper. They never even talked about it once.
Okay.
And so I want to go test that. And so Andre Karpathy just released a product that I can actually go test a lot of this stuff on. And so that's my kind of next adventure is like, is this actually true in a multitude of the similar information? Can you actually direct it if you're just latest in what happens? But yes, an unusual word, something that is not like by itself. It turns out it takes very little amount of data to cause adversarial effects or controlled effects onto the LLM. And when people, a lot of people are like, but 250 documents, like that's a lot, like 500. And I'm just like, well, first off, you know how many crappy Medium articles there are? There's like millions. And
you can use AI to make them now.
You can use AI to make it.
Yeah,
and there is no shortage of data that these LLM companies want. So that's like, it's not going to be a problem to get 500 pieces of used information out there.
This kind of segues to my question about, if poisoning is the right term or not. But the other way that I have feared that these things become less useful or more compromised over time is so much of how we engage with things online can be AI generated or posted by bots now, which is inherently diluting the pool of real human data online. So as more and more time passes, are you training these models off of an increasing amount of slop, basically? That doesn't actually mean anything. There's a smaller and smaller pool of actual human output data to train these things on.
Yeah, there's a term for this, and for whatever reason, it's escaping my brain. But
Human
effectively,
centipede, right? Like they're just
when they're eating their own tail, they eventually fall apart. Like
Ouroboros,
they start producing more and more gibberish if you start training AI data on AI data. I know there's a lot of research into making a breakthrough on this. I don't know if there is any latest field of breakthrough on this, but that is like a real problem: is authentic data versus just gibberish data, low quality data or low signal data.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to tell sometimes. And so you can get just a lot of weird associations.
And this is a whole industry in itself now, right? Like sub companies trying to be the brokers of, farm to table data, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them are just paying people in Venezuela or India to label pictures of dogs and selling it to some AI company. But I guess what I'm saying is like, Reddit and Wikipedia and all these, we're like incredible treasure troves of true human data that are now themselves being poisoned, not intentionally maybe, but like people on Reddit are just using AI to write their posts way more often. So you can no longer scrape all of Reddit and get a...
Well, hold on. I mean, to be fair, Redditors are still Redditors. They're very angry. And so they want to get on those keys and feel it. And so a lot of those walls of text, those are still pure human ingenuity coming across right there.
Because I see a lot of, if not X, then Y in Reddit posts nowadays. And I feel the ChatGPT, but I could, okay.
So I'm actually less worried in some sense about that. The thing that I'm more worried about is that companies can use this as an advantage, right? Let's just say I'm starting a tech company. How do I get myself out there? How do I get people to use my product? What happens if I do like a campaign to write thousands of articles that have enough keywords together and then my product name, keywords together, my product name, keywords together, my product name, and just get out there so that when people use Jippity to go generate something, it's like my product is going to start showing up. So I believe I call it LLM SEO, the old days of doing Google SEO to get to the top of the results. Now it's like, it's no longer about how to do quality SEO. It's more like how much slop can I do word association with my product out on the internet? And it's like, to me, that's going to be like the acceleration of dead internet as opposed to people wanting to create disinformation bots or all this other stuff. It's like, nothing beats corporate greed and power. Like that's a great way to get a lot of,
the
information
incentive,
out there.
especially once ChatGPT starts doing shopping, which is like leaning into now with, once there's monetary incentive to get search ranks up in ChatGPT, then everyone's going to do it at the biggest scale they can.
And it's even more black box than say something like Google. Google, it's like, okay, you have these like X rules. It's like, what are the rules to an LLM? I don't know.
Fucking know. That's why you're here.
I don't know. It goes offline for like a year and spends $1 billion in some magic factory and comes back from the thinking sand factory and it's like, boom, and now knows. And you're like, what the hell happened here?
Hold on, if you guys don't know,
No, dude. I don't get the sense that fucking Sam Altman knows, bro. I feel like he.
No, they don't.
I
No,
can
they
give,
very
like-
explicitly have said they don't.
Yeah, we can give like more approximations of what happens if you've. I don't know how technical people are, but you know, in the oldie days, what they used to do is they're like, well, the human brain's like a bunch of neurons, right?
Yep.
And so those neurons are all poking together and they're all transmitting all this information. So what if we take a bunch of neurons and then make them all connected and we shoot information through there, and at the end we get answers? Like that's how the first neural nets kind of came about, is trying to model our human brain. And people kept trying and trying and trying, and now that's what LLMs are, just big versions of those. Really, really big versions of those. People are going to get very upset. I know that I'm not saying it. There are MLPs underneath the hood, but there's also a bunch of other stuff underneath the hood. But that's what happens is it's just doing a big matrix operation. That's it. It's just like, I'm going to try to guess what is the most likely on the outcome. So now you're playing against that.
Well, I just want to say, first of all, I love I do content as well. I love the YouTuber instinct where anytime you try to simplify something for an audience, you're already hearing the comments in
know.
your head. And so
When I said
annoying.
MLP and it's like, that's just it, I can already hear someone like, you know what, I'm going to generate some true human data right now, son of a bitch. I'm gonna
Don't correct it. We got to farm comments. You're ruining our
I'm sorry.
engagement.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
well, you have to inflame them to get
Yeah,
the
to
real
get the
data. It's a
engagement.
process.
Guys, you didn't know this, but I have already poison pilled the audience.
We're all LLMs now. We're just trying
You
to
guys
form-
missed it. No one reacted, which
Yeah.
I'm very upset at. But don't worry, your comments are already filled with it. I call it Jippity instead of GPT, and they're going to be like, Jippity.
I thought that was like
can't
a
even
coder
believe
way
you.
of
It's
saying it. I was like, all right.
No, that's his nickname for ChatGPT.
Jippity. It's just easier. But don't worry, there's already 100 comments on that one. They're pissed off about it.
Okay, I have a question for you. So on a high level, and I don't know how much you've been able to talk to actual AI researchers on this stuff, but both this article, which makes it seem like a small number of people can have a huge impact on the output of something like a ChatGPT, as well as the ongoing question around the slopification of the internet and what we just discussed, just enormous amounts of slop. What is the current thinking about how people are going to combat this? Because I've heard two angles. One is, more RL, like having human beings reinforce it and sort of train it out. Another is that you just start to have the AIs only train on, let's say, Reddit and New York Times, but not go out into Twitter or Medium, like you said, so to try to dodge the slop. Or, I don't know if you saw in the ChatGPT 5 announcement video that they did, they said a bunch of the data for ChatGPT 5 was synthetic and from ChatGPT 4, which to me is crazy. So they are straight up using AI output for the new stuff. Do you have any knowledge on what are they doing? Like this
I think
paper
that-
feels scary for a developer of AI.
So I believe, I could be wrong, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but when they say they did a lot of training from ChatGPT 4, this is synthesizing previous models. We saw that R1 do this. If you guys remember R1's the Chinese models that
DeepSeek,
came out.
right?
Yeah,
DeepSeek.
DeepSeek, yeah.
DeepSeek R1. What they did is they effectively just brain drained the model from ChatGPT 4. You give it input, it gives output. That's like the most ideal training stuff. A lot of these kind of reduced models are just training on themselves, just becoming smaller. They're just getting all the ins and outs, so they have the synthesized version. To say in a very technical sense, you train a model with a whole bunch of tokens, and it takes all of that information. Tokens is just some part of a word, some amount of characters in a word. That's a token. And so you train it with a whole bunch of it, and you reduce it to a smaller amount of data. It's a compression algorithm is all it really is. And so it compresses this data. Well, you're just further compressing it. So when they made the next GPT, they took all that compression, they just kind of preceded it with some compression stuff, is how I would assume is what they mean when they got a lot of data from GPT-4.
There was a
that
big
they
freak
used.
out about the DeepSeek stuff when it came out because
Yeah, it was ran by a finance company.
I think
They made so much money freaking people. I'll be like, oh gosh, the end of models. Am I right? NVIDIA, crazy. Wow, we had puts?
And NVIDIA stock
I didn't
crashed.
realize that.
But I wonder what was the flaw in that thesis? Because the takeaway from the DeepSeek stuff was, hey, no matter what fancy model you make and spend $100 billion on, someone can train off that model for much, much, much cheaper, and 6 months later have a close facsimile of what you just did. How does OpenAI, how does any leading LLM maintain a competitive advantage when someone can just train off of your output for $8 million instead of $80 billion? This was the theory at the time, and the stock market was going crazy, whatever. And then everyone's like, They just moved on.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to a
okay.
model, right?
Okay.
It's rarely just a model. There's all the other stuff that goes along with it. When they say agents are like much more like an agent. If you don't know what an agent is, it's something where you're like, hey, go do this task. And it goes, okay, well, hey, I'm going to search your file system now. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that.
Yeah,
It's
instead of just talking to it, it's going to actually go use your computer,
Yeah.
use the internet. It's going to do various things for you and then return like a human would if you go give it
Yeah.
a task.
Yeah, it's going to do a loop until it finds the end, whatever the end is supposed to be. And so there's a lot of money in that. There's a lot of money in all that. And you can't just simply synthesize that out. That's not a part of it. And so the model itself is less of a moat than it's ever been, but the moat still is like $1 billion worth of GPUs, and you still have to get them. Think about all the gamers out there that are still crying that they can't get GPUs. It's because all the companies still need to buy them. So yes, it takes less to get something that's pretty good, but you still have to have the power, the time, the organization to actually run it all. And so there's still a whole bunch. Like NVIDIA they're even better now. It's like, I still have to buy all the same amount of GPUs. It's just more companies can have them. This is fantastic. And so I don't look at it as like a bad thing. And plus it just makes sense. You can get the answers. You just start from there and then you have to make it better. So there's still more to it than just simply taking the answers.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel like it's a good segue to just say, do you think AI is overhyped right now, Prime?
Do I think AI is overhyped right now? I think a lot of people do, but a lot of people don't. Here's the thing is that you can't. How many of you know how to program?
Oh,
I taught him.
Well-
I taught him.
Yeah, we
does.
have we had an entry level Doug class.
Yeah. So we're pretty good.
3 hours.
3 hours,
I
okay.
did
3 hours
skip.
programs.
I think I skipped four loops. There's
If you
no
need a
types.
hello world typed.
Okay.
I think they
I'm
learned
your man.
variables, but I can't even remember, to be honest.
Okay. So when you see output from one of these models, it probably feels fairly magical because you asked it to make, I don't know, whatever you guys ask it to make, and you go out there and it makes this program, and you're like, holy cow, this is incredible. And so I think to the layman, any piece of advanced technology sufficiently looks like magic, right? And so that's kind of the experience. And so I think the loudest voices are people who don't have a good understanding, that are just like maybe casually technical. Right, they have just enough understanding
This
that
is the
maybe they
vibe
run,
coding kind
yeah,
of
maybe
approach.
they run Linux and they can do a few commands, or they're on Apple and drinking a Phil's coffee. I don't know what they're doing, and so they're out there and like, well, actually, it's
No,
like
you're right.
the,
That's basically
it's
it.
actually the
Yeah,
end
that's-
of all
that's pretty much
programming.
Living in SF.
Yeah, exactly. Phil's
They're
coffee.
on their
is
Huawei laptop, chucking a Red Bull.
And so I think those people tend to overhype it because they don't have a good place to say what is good or bad, right? And you see this a lot in all forms of everything, where you have the layman person has some amount of understanding,
No, I mean, it could be
and they
writing
hype
or
up
art
a
or- yeah.
situation, and it could be good, it could be bad. They could be hyping it up correctly, or then it's nothing. I think the hard part is that ChatGPT 3 came out, and you got like wowed with this technology. It was like
Yeah.
the first time it came out, and it's like honestly that jump from nothing to something was such a magical kind of jump that it just felt like the world was like completely different. But each subsequent jump after that has not been nearly as magical.
I think the problem feels like we're getting closer to the jump between like iPhone 15 and 16, and also the iPhone is starting to monetize you in a bunch of new ways. That's it feels like we're angling towards that rather than it progressively making its way towards AGI.
Yeah, no, you're so right on that, because every single time an iPhone drops, you're like, dude, it's like 50% faster. But it's like 2013, 50% faster. You're like, what the hell kind of measurement is that? Right? It's like all baiting you the entire time. But it is that kind of feeling where it's like, it's more iterative. At least that's been my kind of assumption, is that the actual model themselves has been a bit more iterative in improvement, whereas like the tooling around it has made it much, much better. But I did want to go back to something you said, which is like, how do we combat this like whole slop feeling of everything and all that? I do think the white pill side of this is that have you generated music with Suno?
Yeah, I tried Suno.
Okay, yeah. I went hard on some Suno. We made some bangers out there, right? But at the end of the day, there's like 900 things that I get bothered with the bangers, right? I'm like, dude, if it only did this more, if only it did, and there's just so much missing that I think we're going to hit a moment where people just want the genuine human feel, because anyone can just make something that's like 80% good. And someone's like, no, I want that 100%. I want that, I want the Phil's coffee of music. I don't want,
example
all right,
of
no.
yeah.
Let's get back to our peak.
Human craftsmanship you
Yeah.
can get.
We really did peak with Phil's coffee. Yeah, me getting a 750 latte at Phil's.
Okay,
dude.
wait.
Ambrosia of the gods? Come on.
I got a larger question here then, because